Hello, my name's Stephanie Toman and I'm going to do the part 2 of the Excel. So this is working for the M4 module in the ICDL Extra. So what we need to do is, as before, we continue with the Excel demo that you found on Aula, and when you open that up, where you'll be starting is, we find it, is the Functions tab. So functions could be a sum, you added something up, average, the average in a range, minimum, which would be the least, least important, the less of the range, or the smallest. It could be lots of language. Max could be the most popular, could be the largest, could be the biggest. So they'll use them in different ways. And then we've got a round. Okay, so let's have a look at these ones. If you drop this down up here on the ribbon, you can see a sum, an average, count, numbers, max, min, and then you've got more functions. So these are the quick ones, the automatic ones that you can use. So if I was going to use a sum in here, if I clicked in there and I did an automatic drop down on a sum, it would automatically assume I was adding these figures up because there are no figures on the other ones. However, I may be adding these up. So notice that when I use my cursor to highlight the areas, it's going from G6, colon in between, everything else in between, to G9. Here, going from C10, see how it's going across, everything in between, and ending at F10. If you bring the function range into where you've got your answer, you'll get an error. So when I've included G10, it won't work because G10 is actually where I'm having my answer. So if I do that, I get what they call a circular reference. So I need to make sure that when I do my sum, if I wanted to edit it, I could go into the formula bar there and edit it and tick, tick, or use enter, and it would add it up. Okay. If I could use the sum for a large area and I just want particular cells. So what I could use is I could use a sum and then I could just use that cell and separate with a comma. So by separating with a comma, it will only pick up those cells. Whereas before, when we use the colon, it's everything in between as well. So that's the difference. So that's how it's built. You can type these in as well. So if I delete that, I could type in equal, SUM. It comes up, double click on it, and then you get your open bracket ready, pick up your range and close bracket, enter. And this is pretty much the same for all of them. So let's have a look at these at the bottom now. Let's bring it up for you so you can see. So let's do our sum again. We can type it in. You want to get used to doing that. There's our sum, double click, pick up the range and close bracket, enter. In here I do an equal average, there it is, pick up the range, close bracket, enter. If I was in here and I wasn't sure what I was going to use, I could go to the FX and I'm looking for the biggest. So I'm looking for the biggest. Let's see if that will come up if I go. Rephrase. It's not happy with that. So if I put the largest, will that help? So large, it's come up with sums. You've got large returns the largest values data set. Max does not ignore logical value. Maximum returns the largest value in a set of values. So that's the one that I could use, isn't it? I wasn't sure. Remember, they're always there. It's the same format again as the others. Double click on the max, pick up the numbers, close the brackets. If you do something like an array, still do it without enter. If you make an error, you want to go back in or you want to change the data, you can just go in and edit it. Anytime you can open these up. This one here, once again, equal min, double click, pick them up, close bracket. Nice and simple, keep it simple. And all of them are there as well. So if I went in there and I deleted that, I could go in here, pick up the min, and it's automatically even picked up the data, enter, and it's done. So if that's the way you want to do it, that's absolutely fine in the test. Enter. Okay. When it comes to round, If we look at this figure here, we've got 2 decimal places, so 36.23. If we use a round with one round into one number, then it drops the 3 and we get 36.2, 1 decimal place. If we have no decimal places, you can see the 0 up there, so the 0, that means we drop the 2 and the 3. If we had a figure 36.9, and I put in a round, let's do it together, so equal round, start to type it in, double click, click on the cell I'm going to use. You can follow the format here, comma, and I'm going to do it by, let's do it by 1, no, let's do it by 2, close bracket, and enter. I've got the same. Let's change that now to 1, and it will stay the same again, but then if we change it to 0, it goes up to 37 because the 9 is quite high, isn't it? This is a 2 and a 3, below 5, that's above 5, so it will round it that way. Okay, if we were going to do this in the paste function, you weren't sure how to do it, you could type in, you could do the round, bring it up, then you could bring the fx function, the insert paste function, and you could put the details in here. So if I was going to do it to E24, I could actually type E24 in there, and the question asks me to round it by no decimal places, so I click that in there. So that's the thing we're doing it to, and that's the decimal places. Now it tells you here what they are, the number you want to round and how many digits. Okay, and then it does the job there. So there's lots of ways to do these things. Another area we can look at is count. Count is a good feature. So it counts the number of cells with numbers in them. This is what a count does. So if we equal count, double click. We can use the fx if we want to. It's pretty straightforward, because all we're going to do is we're going to just pick up that range and then OK, and we've got 5 cells with something in it. If we do this one, double click and pick it up there and put the bracket on ourselves, see the difference, and enter it, we've got 1. But then if I go on and do some other people present, it automatically takes it on board. If I put some text in though, it doesn't. In order to pick up text and data, I would need to use a count A. So count A, it counts cells with both text and data in them. So if we close the bracket on that and enter, there's 6. If we take out the data, 5, sorry, the character or the letters, and then it'll still work. Okay, so be really aware of that. In the exam, when you ask to do this, it's usually an area with a bit of data and some text in it. And what happens is when people use a count, they expect to see a count A, they expect to see more data with a count A because it'll pick both up. But if you use a count and they only want you to pick up the cells with data in, which is correct, if you use the count, you expect to see more coming up because it's quite full and you're thinking, well, there's a lot of data there, it's got to be higher than that, 2 cells or something. So make sure you use the count A if it's mixed, and you just use the count if it's that. There is a count blank as well. Put in count blank, and guess what? Count blank will count the cells that don't have anything in them. Oops, probably took it into my actual, see how I took it into my actual answer area. Didn't like it, and you get what called, I showed you earlier, a circular reference. You can see how that changed. So that's count. Let's continue with some function practice for the next tab along. And we're going to apply some of this. So we've got use the appropriate function, not like we did before, cell referencing, which is a formula. use a function to add up the cells in N2. So click in N2, we can use the equals sum because we're adding up, double click, pick up that range which is all the way along to N, don't include N2, close the bracket, enter, and that one's done. And then it wants us to do the net profit here. So in N14, we could actually do it this way this time. We could click on the auto sum and look how easily it does it. Enter, and that one's done. And if you open them up, that's what they've done. And you can always see them in the formula bar as well. If we move on then to, let's bring it up a little bit. We're going into B16 and we're going to work out the lowest figure from the data range B2 to M2. So we're going to give equal, we're going to have a min, double click on it. Then we need to find B2 to M2. So B2 to M2. Okay, so we're finding the lowest figure, close it off, enter it in, and that's our lowest figure. Find our max. We could do it this way this time if we wanted to, max. And in here, we're actually going to put a data in, and we're going to do it to, let's just make sure it's the same. It is the same range, B2 to M2, and enter. Let's do the average a slightly different way. So for B18, we're going to work out the average tax of the range B2 to M2. So this time we're going to type in average, double click, we're going to bring up the FX. I'm going to find this way of doing it. So in here, we need the range B2 to M2, exactly the same. Okay, and there we've got the average. Okay, moving on to the in D27. So we've got here, and as you can see, I put a little hint there just to make you realise that find out the number attending in D20 to D26 won't recognise the text, so we have to use a count if. That's right, count A. Sorry, count A, not count two. Drop the range in, close the bracket, and that way we can pick them all up, which is great. And then on this one, it says how many cells have data in the range E20 to E26. So in this one, really, we need to think about count only because we do not want to pick up the names, the text, characters, whatever you want to call it, depending on what you call it when you're in Excel. So always remember that in the exam, don't get caught out with it. Okay, so that's that area covered. Okay, so now on to the if function. So I've broken it down here for us. Just bring that up a little bit and over. Okay, so if H6 is greater than and equal to 69, so here's your H6 here, then give an outcome of pass or otherwise fail. So the if function is going to have a look, see if it meets a value. If it does, it will give one outcome that's true. If it doesn't meet that, then it will give an otherwise outcome, which is false. Now, so an if function is obvious when you see pass, fail, good, bad, excellent, poor. They're opposite outcomes. Okay, so that's what you're looking for. Let's break it down then. So let's put in equal if and double click on it or type it in, it's up to you. Let's go to the FX and use the insert function to help us. So we'll line it up with what we've got with regard to the test. If the question's there, you could do that. If you want to get to your data as well, have it on the slide slightly there, and you can hold it in the title area and move it as you wish. So the logical argument is this bit, or if the H6 is greater than and equal to 69. So we've got our if already. So then we need H6. We can type it in or we can click on H6. Is greater than. You need to use the chevrons. So you've got greater than and less than. You need to use these as operators. use an equal sign following a chevron if it says and equal to. Then you can type the 69 in. That's your logical argument. Then the outcome, if true, is pass. It's capitalized, so I'll follow it. Notice the speech marks appear on it when I click away, because if you have text in a function, it always has to be wrapped in speech marks, and it's the speech mark above the number 2 one. If it's false, we want it to come back with fail. And if I click away from fail, it will also fix the speech marks for you. So if I OK that now, and it comes up, you can see how much more work's been done in that function, than when I was using the insert function. So it's put our open brackets in, our closing brackets, put the commas in, and it's put the speech marks in for me. If you know how to do them, you can type it in. Double click, so you've got H6 greater than equal to, and then you've got 69, comma, speech mark pass, speech mark, comma, speech mark fail, speech mark close bracket. And then when we've done it, whichever way we decide to do it, you've got the autofill in the corner. You can drag and drop, or you can go to the first one. If you double click on a autofill, it will fill to the next blank cell. Okay, if you change some of these figures then to 12, oops, my number lock's not on, let's make sure it's on. And you can see that they automatically change as well. So that's a little bit of practice we can do. Let's move to the next one and let's have a go at this. I'll just bring it up a little bit. We'll do the first one and then the second one. So we're always doing the first instance, the first one, and then we autofill the rest. So in G2, work out which employees get a bonus this year. If the employee has had less than 2 days absence, then they get 15% bonus, otherwise they get nothing. Not very kind, but there you go. So let's have a go at it. So equal if, double click on your if and go to your insert function if it makes life easier. You can drop it below your question if your question is across the top, and you can still see your data, so wherever it's safe. Your logical argument you need to break down, remember, with operators. So what it's asking is if the employer's had less than 2 days holiday, so that's the absence. If F2 is less than 2, not equal to, doesn't include 2. If that's the argument, then what they want you to do come back with is a 15% bonus, if not a 0. And you can put the percentage in if you are asked to. It will still work. As you can see, you've got a result. Okay. And then if you double click down, you can see if you put those actually into percentages, then they'll come out like that. Okay, so that's worked. In H2, we're going to pop in an equal. It's an if again. Double click. And we're going into our FX. So we're looking at a different argument here. So let's pop this up here. So our logical argument in H2, work out which employees are 50 or over. So it's about age. So the age is 50, greater than and equal to 50. So it is including 50. Then they can arrange for the pensions using meeting if that's true, or no meeting. Notice the speech marks coming in if it's false. So then when we autofill, double click, anybody that's under 50, not many, quite an old workforce there. If it doesn't work, look again at how it's broken down and what you should have and where, and make sure you meet those requirements. Okay, that's going to take us on to absolution. Okay, on the absolute tab, the next one along, let's bring this up slightly. We have what they called relative reference relative cells. Relative cells are when a cell changes automatically when you auto-fill it down. So if I use, do you remember the control key, those of you who made at the beginning of this, use your thumb on the control key and the key above the tab if you tap it. So if we look at the back end here, you can see it's changed from D6 to D7 to D8, which is correct. That's relative cell. In other words, that's the whole point. You do the first instance and the rest automatically moves down if you're going down. Automatically moves the column across the column if you're going across the column with an autofill. And you can see the same things happened here, the E6, the E7, the E8. So that's relative. However, when you've got an absolute cell means that it stays the same. So if we wanted an absolute cell for the VAT, which is in H1, we wanted the same VAT times D6 by VAT H1, D7 by H1, and DH by H1. We'd have to do is this. So back to the values at the front. Let's go to the first one that's been done. You can double click on it and you can work in here or you can work in the formula bar, whichever way. If you click on it, some people like to highlight it, doesn't matter, and use the F4 function key. So the function key right above, right at the very top of your keyboard, somewhere around near the 4. Tap the function key and it absolutes both the H and the 1, which would represent the column and the row. Tap it again and it only will make the row absolute because it's in front of the number. Hit it again and it will only make the column absolute because it's in front of the column. And again, and it goes back to what we call relative. We want this on absolute, which is both column and row, so it stays in the cell when we autofill it down. So let's tick the little box. Then when you autofill it, it actually works. And if we go to the control key again and the one above the tab and tap, you can see that you've made it stay on H1, which means it's that cell all the way through. If I go in here and I change it back to relative, tick, and I autofill down, when I click on there, do you see how this is auto-filled down as well? So when it's not absoluted, this moves down. When I autofill here, that moves down too. And you can see that one's in the middle. And the first one always works. So back to absolute it with an F4. Click tick. Autofill down so you can see it from this view. And you can see that now it actually stays in H1. We move over here, we've got a similar thing here. We want them to stay on here but move across the column. Then we have to absolute by column. So it's the I6 we're absoluting. So we're clicking there, F4, and it's the column. Make sure it's in front of the column. And then when you autofill it across, it works. It stays in A. I6 stays the same, but the rest move across. So that's mixed cell referencing when you've got just by row or just by column, absolute double $sign, and relative is no $signs. And you can type them in if you wish in the exam, it's quite acceptable. I go back to values now with my control and the key above the tab key. There's this one as well if you want to absolute by the row. Before we move on, front of the number, and then when you autofill down, it works. Okay, so let's go to your next one. Here's another example of absolution. So we've got our ticket prices, and ticket prices are going to stay the same when we do our figures for how many adults have attended and how many children have attended. So we're trying to find out what the cost of the tickets are. And we've done our first one here, and as you can see, it's 2D10 is the ticket. So that's the ticket times the amount of adults plus the ticket per child times the amount of children. And that will work for the first one, because remember, when you autofill it down, it does. But when I double click on this one, This has moved down from here. It's moved down there, which is correct, but we do not want the D10 and the E10 to move. So back to the first one again, it's the D10 we're absoluting, so absolute completely, and the E10 we're absoluting, and they're the tickets. Ticket prices will stay the same. Double click and it fixes. Notice this value here. This has come up because it's hit a label. So it comes up with an value error because it's hit a label. But if we wanted to fix it, remember that one's absoluted, that one's absoluted. And then auto fill and it fixes. And you can see how it stays on there. If you double click and use escape key above your grave accent, all times you can see how that works. So it's really worth using. Okay, we're coming up to the end of it now, and we're looking at some charts, some of the areas in charts that you'll need to know for your exam. And we have a pie chart. So isolating, we can do this on a chart as well. So this is one of the ways. So if you single click the 22%, they all get handles. Then you single click again, you're actually isolating that segment. If you're asked in a chart, there's lots of things they might ask you to do. They might ask you to click on all the labels and delete them. If you click on a chart, you will get the option to right click and add data labels. If you do a right click add data labels, it will be automatically at the end of the segment. However, all of the things you need on a chart, whether it's pie chart or something else, will always be in the chart elements alongside. So if you click off the chart, it disappears, click on the chart and they're back. So chart elements are always there. You can put a title in, above chart, and then you can see it's up here. And so lots of things you can do there. If we move to the next one, the charts itself, there's definitely a lot we can cover here. So you, as I said, you click on a chart, you've got chart elements, and you can do things on right clicks as well. But first of all, chart elements, you've got your axes, you've got your data labels, as I just said, and you can change where they are. You go to the more options, it brings up the task pane here, and you can do category names on your chart series names, and you can change what you show with regard to that. With the fill on this, if we isolate a fill, if I wanted to isolate this bar, one single click brings up all of them, another single click isolates that, and then I can fill that one with a colour on its own, so it's isolated. So you can see that when you click on the chart and click off, the blue handle disappears, the chart extra tabs disappear. Click back, there's your chart tool. So you've got design area, formatting area. When you click on the chart, these blue handles appear. So you can drag that over and include another bit of data onto your chart, include the March. If we just show how you can bring it off, see how it's disappeared and going down to 1 and back over again. We can change a chart type. You can see, I'll have a look at the resize in a minute. So you can change a chart type. So we could change the series February, right click on there, go to change series chart type. And make sure instead of going up here and doing a line, that will change them both. You need to make sure that you make the change here on a comparison chart. Let's put that back to 1. Let's try this one, it might be a better one. Not really, but gives you an idea, doesn't it, of what it looks like. Okay. So if you change chart, it might be worth adding a secondary format data series and add a secondary axis just in case if they're very different data. Okay, so lots of different things you can do there. Let's close this off again. Resizing a chart, if you do resize, always resize from a corner to keep it in proportion. Otherwise, if you don't, you'll be doing that, which won't look very good. And legends, data labels, and moving. So you've got a legend here. You can right click and you can find format legend. If you want to do it that way, you could do it at the top and top right, etc. And you could show the legend without overlapping the chart. Data labels we did earlier. So right click, add data labels, put them outside end. If I just click on them and delete again, right click, try it again, add data labels, and there they are. Let's close that. Moving a chart. So if you're going to move this somewhere, you need to right click in the chart area. Notice I'll just come off again. This is the plot area. This is the chart area. So right click there and you're going to move. So moving the chart means that you're moving it from one sheet to another. You're not cutting and pasting. So clicking and moving the chart into its new sheet, you can give it a name, OK, and then you'll see that it's moved right in front of the previous one. To move it back again, move chart back into the object, but the one you want, the sheet you want, is called charts. OK, and then it's back in there. You can resize it if you need to. Okay, so then we've covered all of these areas about resizing the chart. The background color to chart is quite important. So remember here, if I right click and I'm going to fill, I would be filling the plot area. If I right click here and format chart area, or if I right click and just use this way, which is quicker, I'm doing the chart area. So be really careful and remember 2 single clicks will isolate the one bar. Just another couple of little things to look at before we move on to the final tab. If I actually delete this chart, there's obviously an important one is to how create one. So you're in your insert tab, you're told which one to use. Generally, it's the default one. Look at the language that they use with regard to clustered column. That's all it is. It's just a bar chart. So what you're doing before you do that, so let's go back, highlight the data that you want to use. Say that one there. Let's say we're going to use that data. Back in, insert, you know where to look for your charts. 2-column clustered chart. You can see how it's come out great. And then remember, once you've done all of that, you can change the details with regard to chart type, titles, data labels, grid lines, legends. You can even do the axis, so you can right click on an axis and format axis. That comes up on a sidebar, and you might want to go up in minimum, and let's do 60 because we can still accommodate that. Okay, and you can see that if I change it, it's gone to 60 there, and it's just at the top for some of them. Remember that if you want to edit a chart with regard to its cost, its sales and things, you've got this select edit here. So you could actually, I've got one there that's profit that's not included. So there's no point in really having that. But I could include going into there. I could add a series name profit, and I could add the data that goes with that profit. And OK, and then you can see that it's brought that one in as well. So you can do quite a lot with this. You can edit, you can change the profit name to something else. You could change it in there. So editing your data is going to be using that select data feature there. All the things that I showed you, the move chart, the change chart type, they're all here in these tabs. And there's your chart elements. So you can use this way too. That's it then on the Excel, all the things you need to know for the exam. Remember there are papers you can access on Aula, and you can try those before you try your diagnostic test, and they will give you lots of practice in all of the areas that we've covered in this video. And also remember In the folder where you find the materials for the lecture, you also have the worked Excel demo as well. So if you wanted to look at things yourself outside of this recording, this video, and have a little play with things and learn how to do things yourself practically, they're all in here. Okay, so that's it for today's lecture on Excel. Thank you very much, and see you soon.